is home games. Thanks for joining us. That is Bubba O'Neill in the top row from CHCH TV Sports. Below him, Steve Milton from the Hamilton Spectator. And beside him, Rick Zamperin from 900 CHML Radio. I'm Scott Radley from the Spectator and 900 CHML Radio. And guys, questions about the NHL and COVID. We've seen this issue crop up in other leagues. We've seen the National Women's Hockey League end their season because of COVID. Baseball had some issues early on. Basketball's had a few. But Bubba, is the NHL doing enough? Because right now, what is it, 5 teams are facing COVID problems? Are we heading towards disaster here, or is this just a blip?
Well, I want to believe that Gary Bettman, like all other commissioners that have started seasons, have just basically admitted to themselves that we're going to deal with COVID and we're going to try and truck through COVID, and that there's a reality that teams, players might not be able to play or participate, but we will leave enough in their schedule that we can maybe make up games if we have to. And I think we've already come to the realization that a point percentage finish may have to be the reality based on the fact that we're seeing so many teams, 5 teams, I believe it is right now, that are not playing right now. And who's to say there won't be more in the future? So I believe that the league just admitted to this and are willing to truck through it because money talks and you got to get the season in.
I'd be very concerned here. And here's one of the reasons. When we look at some of the teams, and I think you mentioned Minnesota, Jersey, Vegas, Buffalo. Who's the other one that's out right now?
Colorado.
Okay, so 4 of them are in cold weather states. The first 4 were in warm weather states. Mm-hmm. Now we're just moving into the cold weather season, right? Where we know that was predicted by the second wave. It's why Ontario had such a spike when it did because of the people inside of Christmas, all of those kinds of things. So we can expect more of this. I got a real feeling. I think they've done what they can, given what they decided to do. And that's exactly what Bubba said, except that COVID's part of it, but that we also need to play. And they didn't want these players being on them, away from their homes and families and everything like that for 4 months or something like that. So, and the players didn't want that. But I got a sense we're looking at some bubble here in the future, and I that has to be part of their alternative plans, and people say it is.
I think the one saving grace, if there is one for the National Hockey League, is that because it's only interdivision play, that New Jersey can't play, so they won't play against any other team in their division. So the points percentage, I think, will still work because those games are going to be against interdivision foes, obviously. So that's one, I guess, little check mark in the NHL's column. But there's a lot going against it. This virus doesn't care, about the crest on the front of the particular sweater of a hockey team. And number 2, unlike baseball, hockey, they can't play doubleheaders. They can't play 5 games in a row. I mean, technically they could, but by game 4 or 5, we would be watching something that pales in comparison to what we have normally expected. So. Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think every team is going to play 56 games. There will be a points percentage, and I think the NHL has prepared for this. I'm not sure if they were guessing it was going to be this bad this soon, but they should have been if they weren't.
Look, baseball, I think we talked about it on here. Baseball started the year with a disaster, and we said there's no way baseball is going to finish because the Miami Marlins had about 4 players left. I mean, there was just nobody was healthy, and we said it made it, and they had a World Series, and the NHL will make it. And I mean, I really believe that, and they'll figure it out. And I mean, it is going to throw a few wrenches into things because look, what happens? No Canadian teams yet that we know of have been affected by this. But what happens if the Oilers are in a playoff hunt and Connor McDavid and Draisaitl both go down with positive COVID tests? It really screws up the competitive balance. Or if Marner and Austin Matthews go down, or, pick whoever. It could play seriously into who makes the playoffs, but I absolutely believe there will be playoffs and there will be a Stanley Cup awarded. They'll figure out a way.
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I just don't know if that's going to, I know competitive balance, but we've already had an experience where, Alex Ovechkin's missed 4 games, right? So what difference does that make? This league is going to continue to just play this through. How long it's going to last, I'm not sure. Now, you talked about baseball, slugging through it. That's a different thing to me. That's an outdoor situation. You can really space. You're on a field that can space out players. This is a hockey game.
What about the NFL?
Everything's compressed, right?
What about the NFL though? They did it.
I don't think.
Hold on. Let me say this.
Sorry, Bob.
You got something to also consider too. That the National Hockey League have to get in their season within a specific time frame because of NBC saying, look, we cannot have your season going on and your playoffs going while the Olympics start. So they're in a real tight time frame here, right? They've already introduced these 4 sort of ways to space out players, tell players not to show up to the game 90 minutes before, no glass behind the board, behind your bench anymore. They're desperate right now. Let's be honest. The National Hockey League are desperate to complete their season. And I just don't know if this is going to happen, guys.
I think it's going to happen. It's just it's going to be in a different way. It's because of that desperation, Bob, that I think that'll happen. I think they've actually, this is a very well organized league, and people in Hamilton would hate to hear this, but since Bettman took over, it's just completely a night and day. And it's particularly since the new millennium has come in. We may not like a lot of the things, especially a couple of things, but he's way ahead of the game most of the time. I worry a little bit about if players get it, and of course they don't. Most of them are healthy and they aren't really affected. We don't know what the long-term effects of it is, but I will say this: I don't think any of the infection problem isn't on the ice most of the time, or on the field, or on the pitch. It is usually from outside types of sources that come in. Either somebody in the organization brought it home into their family and brought it in, or there's somebody that's working at the rink or the stadium, or you just catch it that way. I think we're finding is, and that's what the tracing's about. So I'm not so sure it's as big a problem right on in the rink. I mean, the rink's still pretty big. Well, they get pretty close though. I just don't see necessarily it's there. That's where once somebody has it, that's where you get the transmission, but not necessarily where it originates.
I think scheduling wise too, I think the NHL has a pretty good safety net in terms of, the taxi squads. The American Hockey League isn't playing, so there's a wealth of players that they could, sub in for someone who has COVID. So I think the timeline is still going to work. They're going to play the games regardless of who's on the ice. And for teams, you got to treat it like an injury. If you have COVID, you're on the injured list. It's just called it, something different.
Yeah, but if you get multiple players, you can't play guys, right?
Well, you can play, but you might not be competitive.
Bub's right there, because like knee injuries to Crosby aren't catching to the rest of the team.
Not
right?
contagious.
The rest of the team doesn't have to sit down. But I worry about that. I'm really brokenhearted for the NWHL. They're what, 24 hours or 36 hours away from getting national broadcast for the final 2 games, and it was scrubbed, and in effect, if you look backwards, that was very difficult for them to even now. That was a big moment for them going to happen, and it didn't.
The reality is up here with the NHL, especially in this area, in Southern Ontario, the COVID thing is really a non-factor until 4 or 5 Maple Leafs or 4 or 5 Montreal Canadiens go down with a positive test. And then suddenly the NHL is not doing enough, and this is a disaster, and we must put the entire season on pause until we're healthy. Look, we heard in the NFL, now not the NFL itself, but there were people around the NFL who were saying if Patrick Mahomes, that they should put off, if he was not healthy, they should delay the game against Buffalo a couple of weeks ago until Patrick Mahomes was healthy enough to play. It was stupid, but people actually said that. You can guarantee that if a bunch of Montreal Canadiens or Toronto Maple Leafs or Vancouver Canucks or whatever else go down with positive COVID tests, people will be screaming, pause it till they get back. Otherwise, this is not fair.
Where's the NHL based now? Where's it run out of?
Say that again?
Where's the NHL based now? This is why that won't change anything.
No. What do you think? Is the NHL doing enough? Is this an issue? Is this not an issue? Is this just like baseball or basketball? They had a few tests, but no problem. They made it through, and they'll have a season and have playoffs. What do you think? Comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe as well. Hit the little button to subscribe. We would love it for you to know when these are coming up. We do them often now. Thanks for watching.